Growing up, my grandmother Josephine used to tell me stories about her life growing up in the Pueblo of Ohkay Owingeh. Sweetie, there were 10 of us in the home: Mama, Daddy, my 4 brothers, and my 3 sisters. There were only 2 rooms in our house, the kitchen and the living room. We had to sleep on the dirt floors, but that's how it was back then. When families needed help in their fields, we would help each other. We would all trade our labor. The stories of Ohkay Owingeh go back much further than 700 years, witnessing thousands of births and deaths, joys and sorrows. But through it all, our Pueblo has always been the sacred heart of our Pueblo. When you put stucco on natural adobe, it doesn't allow it to breathe. So as water gets in, it starts to saturate that adobe until eventually it completely dissolves. 10 years ago, the structures in Ohkay Owingeh stood as shells of stucco, no longer walls of robust earth that it used to be. When the project started, that's all that stood there. So as that ancient adobe was washed away, it took with it some of the life of our ancestors. So when the HUD came in, our tribal members were scattered across the reservation, only leaving 12 homes that were being lived in. It no longer looked like the first capital of New Mexico. So in 2005, the Owe'neh Bupingeh Rehabilitation Project was created with a $7,500 grant from the State Historic Preservation Office, with only a century-old hand-drawn map and 2 women, Tomasita Duran and Jamie Blosser. Together, they set out in research to find out about the historical Pueblo so that it could be restored. This project took years of preparation. Summer students interviewed elders, not about how the buildings used to be, but about how life used to be in our Pueblo. Pueblo members got together and formed an advisory team because they wanted their voices to be heard. Things like doors and windows, how canales would look, and of course, the incorporation of mud plaster. And on top of that, there also needed to be an environmental assessment that needed to take place. There are also cultural sensitivities about digging into the earth of our ancestors, and those also needed to be addressed. And balancing rehab versus restoration, a common ground needed to be found on that as well, and ownership. When I started working with the Ohkay Owingeh Housing Authority over 6 years ago, my first task was to identify the homeowners of each home in the Pueblo. Wow. Homes did not belong to just one person. It belonged to families. So people needed to sign over their ownership to just one of their family members, and that was a challenge. In one case in particular, an uncle would not give up his ownership of the bathroom to his niece. So I'll have you know, he did give it up and the house turned out beautifully. But this was a challenge that many families faced. After all of those items were addressed, construction started. It was such a huge project and so complex with so many cultural sensitivities, but Owe'neh General Contracting is the contractor that took it on. And they brought on board Adobe expert Pat Taylor. Pat was able to train the Owe'neh crew of Adobe construction, allowing 43% of those workers to be from Ohkay Owingeh. So as they worked on the homes on their own homes and their homes of their neighbors, this almost forgotten craft of our people was relearned, and a bond formed between them and with the Pueblo. So a new sense of community rose with those walls. To date, 34 homes have been completed. There's 15 more to go, 20 more of development, several years, $7 million worth of funding that's still needed to get that done. So when I started on the project, I was only 22 years old. I didn't know much of my own heritage to truly appreciate it, but now that I've been participating more, I have found a new sense of belonging within my people. This year, for our annual feast day in June, I saw more people in our Pueblo than I have ever seen in my life. Families opened up their homes to all of those that wanted to have that cultural experience. It was very beautiful. It was a moment in time that I got to stop, step back, and realize how very privileged and lucky I am to be part of something so dynamic, changing not only the lives of our community, but everybody that's involved within our Pueblo. My aunt told me, "I have never seen the Pueblo so full of life. I can smell the meals being cooked. I can hear the laughter of the children, and we are lucky to have what we do." This project took several years to get together, to get to the progress that we've gotten to today. Countless of hours of sweat and tears, including my own. It's very frustrating working with government funding and families. So, going forward, I have now realized this is more than just a rehabbing housing project. This is a rebuilding of our Pueblo, a rebuilding of our community, and most of all, a rebuilding of our people. One of our homeowners pointed to her walls and said, "The breath of my ancestors live in these walls." From the earth, a home, from the past to future, Ohkay Owingeh.